She was born a princess whose very blood made her dangerous, because the crown she might one day wear was also the shadow that could fall suddenly, teaching her early that greatness and peril often arrived holding the same hand. In long palace corridors where tapestries whispered history, Elizabeth learned that silence could protect more effectively than noise, while watching adults smile politely even as fear tightened behind their eyes. Her mother's absence lingered like an unfinished sentence, shaping a childhood where affection felt conditional and memory itself seemed risky, forcing Elizabeth to grow attentive to what remained unsaid. Rather than belonging fully anywhere, she drifted between households and expectations, becoming comfortable with uncertainty while quietly studying how power reshaped rooms without announcing itself. Observation became her refuge, as she learned to read faces quickly, noticing how confidence was often performed and how weakness disguised itself beneath ceremony. A light, thoughtful humor developed, not as mockery but as a private lens, allowing her to survive tense moments by noticing the absurdity woven into solemn traditions. Books offered safer companionship than people because languages and ideas did not betray suddenly, and through study she discovered an inner freedom untouched by political storms. Latin, Greek, and modern tongues expanded her imagination, helping her sense worlds beyond England while sharpening a mind already trained to anticipate danger from multiple directions. Court life surrounded her with rituals and rules, yet she understood that rules shifted depending on who interpreted them, especially when religion and loyalty blurred into accusation. Silence, therefore, became strategy rather than weakness, as she practiced listening longer than expected, allowing others to reveal intentions through impatience. Her emotions stayed guarded, not from coldness, but from survival instinct, since unfiltered feeling invited scrutiny that could quickly become fatal. Faith divided the kingdom and her family, teaching Elizabeth that belief carried consequences far beyond prayer, and that choosing sides could fracture even blood ties. She learned to separate public composure from private reflection, developing an inward world where questions could be explored safely before any outward declaration. When danger sharpened during her sister's reign, the tower loomed not as history, but as possibility, forcing Elizabeth to rehearse courage while cultivating humility. Letters became spaces of careful self-construction, where each phrase balanced honesty against protection, revealing intelligence without inviting suspicion. Patience hardened slowly into strength, because waiting, when practiced deliberately, offered control over impulse and panic. Amid gatherings where eyes followed her movements, Elizabeth sensed how visibility altered meaning, turning every gesture into speculation. Being a woman near power intensified scrutiny, exposing contradictions between expectation and ability, which she absorbed quietly rather than resisting openly. Marriage proposals hovered like negotiations disguised as romance, prompting reflection on freedom, authority, and the cost of belonging to another's ambition. Independence took root internally first, long before it could be claimed publicly, as she learned to trust her own judgment over reassurance. Comparisons to her siblings shaped awareness rather than resentment, helping her understand how narratives were constructed and rewritten. Tension with Mary foreshadowed future trials, offering lessons in caution and empathy, since survival required understanding even those who opposed her. Adaptability became second nature, not through deception alone, but through sensitivity to shifting circumstances. Her imagination sketched possibilities of rule without certainty, allowing her to envision leadership while remaining grounded in present risk. Loneliness sharpened awareness, teaching her self-reliance without bitterness and resilience without bravado. Trust remained scarce, forcing discernment between loyalty offered sincerely and allegiance shaped by convenience. Gradually, Elizabeth learned allegiance to self, grounded in principle rather than approval. Identity formed through restraint, reflection, and repeated testing of boundaries. Youth unfolded not as innocence, but as preparation, shaped by tension and alertness. She observed courtly drama with gentle irony, noting how seriousness often hid insecurity. Waiting defined her rhythm, turning uncertainty into a discipline. Time refined her intellect, layering patience onto curiosity. No grand conclusion appeared yet, only continuity and learning. She stood on thresholds frequently, aware that balance mattered more than speed. Each breath carried calculation and hope together. Uncertainty became familiar rather than frightening. Her story widened quietly, without announcement. Silence gathered before coming change, dense with possibility. Endurance replaced expectation as her compass. Caution and optimism learned to coexist within her. An inner crown began to take shape, forged from discipline and awareness. Restraint revealed itself as a kind of power. Choices rehearsed privately would one day shape nations. Her gaze lifted outward, steady and observant. Memory of danger tempered ambition without erasing it. Readiness formed without name or title. She became herself long before she became queen. Youth closed gently, like a door not slammed. Another opened just ahead, inviting continuation rather than certainty. That open doorway did not promise safety, yet Elizabeth sensed movement at last, because stillness had trained her to recognize momentum even before it announced itself through trumpets or formal declarations. As responsibilities edged closer, she carried forward habits of listening and restraint, allowing memory to guide her steps while ambition remained carefully folded, like a map consulted only when no one else was watching. The court subtly recalibrated around her presence, and she noticed how tones softened or sharpened depending on perceived advantage, confirming lessons learned earlier about performance and power. She held her composure not as armor, but as language, communicating steadiness while emotions stayed layered beneath, active yet controlled. Decisions appeared first as thoughts rather than actions, and she weighed them inwardly, knowing that haste could undo years of careful survival. Elizabeth's humor resurfaced as gentle observation, quietly deflating arrogance while preserving harmony, a skill refined through years of being underestimated. Education proved its worth now, since words chosen precisely could open paths closed to force, especially in a kingdom balancing belief, loyalty, and fear. She sensed how leadership required presence without excess and firmness without cruelty, which demanded constant awareness rather than dramatic gesture. Counsel surrounded her, yet she evaluated advice like weather, assessing direction, pressure, and hidden storms. Loneliness persisted, though transformed, because authority narrowed companionship even as it expanded influence. Elizabeth understood that rulership involved containment, guiding chaos without claiming to eliminate it, and this realism steadied her expectations. Public rituals contrasted with private doubt, reminding her that certainty was often an illusion projected for comfort. Trust developed selectively, built through patterns rather than promises, and she accepted this limitation without regret. Her patience now functioned as timing, allowing opportunity to mature instead of forcing outcomes. The balance between caution and courage demanded continuous adjustment, like maintaining footing on uneven ground. She reflected often, not nostalgically, but analytically, drawing strength from endurance already proven. Power no longer felt distant, yet it remained heavy, requiring focus rather than excitement. Elizabeth's sense of self clarified through responsibility, revealing how inward discipline supported outward command. Voices grew louder, urging decisiveness, and she responded with measured resolve rather than haste. Conflict loomed but did not dominate her thinking because preparation eased fear. She recognized the weight of expectation placed upon her gender, and she reshaped that burden into advantage through intelligence and restraint. Authority settled gradually, like fabric tailored over time, adjusting until it fit naturally. Her awareness extended beyond court walls, imagining the people unseen who would feel consequences of every choice. Reflection tempered ambition, preventing triumph from becoming recklessness. She allowed silence strategically, knowing when absence of speech created space for clarity. Leadership revealed itself as continuity rather than spectacle. Elizabeth's inner life remained active, grounding her amid ceremony and counsel. Complexity no longer intimidated her because early confusion had trained adaptability. She learned to accept uncertainty as companion rather than enemy. Memory and foresight intertwined, shaping decisions layered with caution. Confidence emerged not from acclaim but from repetition of survival. Her presence became steadier, less questioned, though never unchallenged. Humor flickered quietly, easing tension without diminishing seriousness. Power demanded empathy to prevent isolation from hardening into arrogance. Elizabeth monitored herself constantly, aware that authority magnified every flaw. Time accelerated, yet she maintained a deliberate pace. Expectation pressed forward, carrying possibility and risk together. She felt neither triumphant nor afraid, only prepared. The doorway widened into a corridor of choices. Each step carried consequence, acknowledged but not dramatized. Continuity defined her approach, reinforcing stability in shifting times. The girl shaped by silence now guided conversation through intention. Experience had refined instinct into judgment. Calm replaced anticipation as her dominant state. Purpose grew clearer without narrowing imagination. She stood centered between caution and resolve. The future unfolded gradually, without finality. This chapter closed softly, promising further testing.